Subscribe to Film Companion for your film fix. Hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.
Uta, such a pleasure to have you on Film Companion. The Wheel of Time is such a massive, sprawling world. 14 books, one prequel, dozens of characters, worlds, such an intricate mythology. And you had the responsibility of setting this all up with that first episode. Tell me, what was your biggest challenge? What was it that kept you up at night?
Oh, wow. What kept me up at night? I think when it comes to, creating a really big world, or in general, if you make a big, massive TV series or a big movie, you never do it alone. So you are surrounded by a team of incredibly talented people who help you build this world. I think my job very much was to have a coherent vision for all the different departments, for the production design, the sets that we were building, for the costumes, for hair and makeup. I work very, very detail oriented, but in the end, it all has to fit together, and every little detail has to be a part of this massive world. What kept me up at night, those are usually things that I can't control. But then I say, for instance, bad weather. What happens if it rains, if we have really bad weather, if it's muddy and the Trollocs will slip in the mud or whatever. But things that I can control, I'm also, then thinking well, that's not really my responsibility if I can't control it. So it's not really keeping me up at night.
Did that happen? Did it rain and did the Trollocs slip?
No, but we definitely had a change of weather, but it worked beautifully for us because the weather changed the day we started shooting the aftermath, of the big Trolloc battle. And so where everything was supposed to be gloomy and dark, and we come to set and we had this beautiful, overcast weather hanging into the two rivers. And we never saw the sun, and it just beautifully played towards the gloomy atmosphere that we wanted. And the problem would have been if in the middle of shooting, all of a sudden the sky had opened up and the sun would have broken out, and that's always a little bit of a nightmare. That's stuff that you sweat, also as a former DP, I always, look for the light. So we were very lucky that it kept being gloomy all day long, and it played beautifully for us.
This scale of this series is so epic. I've been reading up on it, and I read that the budget is $10 million per episode. Amazon built its own studio. I mean, that's just that, to get your head around that, okay? And apparently there's sort of football field size sound stages. There's a stunt gym. There are offices. I also read that the series kind of came about because a few years ago, Jeff Bezos said to his executive team that I want my own Game of Thrones. How did you disconnect from all of that and just focus on the characters, focus on the story, and keep that sort of moving?
If David Brown set up these amazing stages for us outside of Prague, they were actually built in an old, I think, truck factory. So it's kind of funny, you have, this massive open space, but of course you see the leftovers of equipment from a truck factory, open spots in the ground where they would drive the trucks over, to work on them, whatever. And we used all these things. For instance, all the water work. We just created, a pool in one of these openings, and did our water work in there. Well, to forget all about it, it's, I always, you always stay focused on what's ahead of you. The great thing about having these massive stages makes it possible for us to have all the departments together. So it makes it very easy to communicate to everybody. If we needed to see a stunt rehearsal, Rafe and I, we just walk out our office and we see our stunt coordinator, Jan, he's rehearsing with, the stunt doubles, and we are right there. And while we're here, let's just go buy costumes, and we walk a couple more feet or more 100 couple of feet and get to the costume department, and which is also massive, and meet with Isis Musanen, who, did these beautiful costumes for us. And then we go and visit, Nick Dudman, who created the Trollocs and the creatures for us with his massive team, So you are aware of how big it is. But to tell you the truth, it just gave me joy because, you realize you have this army of unbelievably talented people working on this show. We all have this goal to put this, these beautiful books by Robert Jordan on the screen. And so it's always the bigger picture. You see the machinery around it, but then you end up, like zooming in on a hair on a Trollocs nose, like that you want to change or something like this. There's always the big part around it, but you zoom in on the detail, like that everything, is in its right spot.
And I read that there were days when there were 1,000 people on the set. Did it ever get overwhelming?
Never, because logistically, the challenging days definitely, I think, were, the big Trolloc battle for us, because you had stuntmen in these costumes on stills, and they had to be attended to. I think each stunt person in a Trolloc costume had like maybe 2 people attending to them, because it was just difficult for them just to get liquids, and they also needed food, and they needed to sit down, so they had special chairs, high chairs that they could sit on, in between takes. So these things had to be brought in quickly in between takes and then moved out again when we are shooting, So you're aware that there are all these people doing their job, but it was like such a smooth running machine that for me, as as a director, I can just focus on what's my next setup, what do I need to get, what do I need to change. So I didn't have to worry about, the Trollocs need to sit down, can we bring a chair? That was all taken care of. That was all figured out,
The details were handled.
Yes, everything was handled, and that gives you actually a sense of great comfort that, people are taken care of, because as director, for me, this is something I always have in mind. Are people taken care of? And when you see this machine is so well oiled, everybody's taken care of, and we move smoothly, then if anything at all, it's kind of very empowering, to tell you the truth, to realize everybody works together towards this one goal, and you have the privilege of saying action.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Let's talk about the books a little. What's interesting to me is that they sort of do away with those kind of archetypes of, all the heroes being men and these wizards with long beards. I mean, in this world, the women are more powerful. They're the ones who get to wield the magic, which is just, it's fab. Do you think being a female director was a distinct advantage in setting it up because of this?
I like to say yes, because obviously we're portraying very powerful female characters. And I think psychologically, I think it also does something for the crew to see a woman at the helm, I remember, just to give you an example, I remember that we were shooting a scene in the battle where the women worked together to fight a Trolloc. And after we rehearsed the scene for the first time, all the women on set started applauding afterwards. And that hasn't happened on any other scene. They all started applauding. And I was kind of moved by that reaction. And I asked them, why are you applauding? And they said to me, because it's awesome. It's women working together, kicking that Trolloc's ass, And then it made me realize again how much it means to women to see a certain kind of representation. And I think by me being on set as a woman, I'm representing for every woman who works on set. There is a different glass ceiling now, or maybe we've broken through it. We can all move up and show our talent and work to our full potential, and we're not being held back anymore simply by being women.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's just wonderful. Uta, you said in an interview that only a good performance makes a good image. Can you explain that a little more?
Well, I love that you bring this up. This is so interesting. It's very interesting for me to see how these things actually live and travel. I like to say, and I wonder, is anybody, really paying attention to that? I tell you what I mean. As a cinematographer, I've seen many films, so I've seen films in festivals that were not that well shot. The cinematography was not that good, actually. But the film was really well acted and it was well written. So the film does really well. And because of that, the cinematographer gets attention as well, because he or she, shot a successful film, which sometimes makes you wonder, can people really judge what's really good cinematography and what is actually more of an accident? And I've seen many films that were beautifully shot, but the films were bad and the performances were bad. And that cinematographer will not get attention. You never walk out of a movie and you hear people say wow, the film really, really, really sucked. but the cinematography was beautiful. I'm going to reach out to the cinematographer. People don't say that. People reach out to the cinematographer who was attached to a successful film, even if it didn't look as good. And the reason is, I think, if you shoot a bad performance that makes you cringe, you don't have a good image. Nobody will judge your image or your cinematography as good, so you need but you can have not so great lighting, but a great, strong performance. And immediately your image is uplifted because of the great performance.
Yeah.
That's basically what I was trying to say.
Tell me, what advantage do you think being a cinematographer gives you as a director?
I think, first up front, when I have bigger scenes or scene in general to break down, I understand what's the best order to do it, to not constantly turn the room around. You have the DOP, the director of photography, just light in one direction, then you move in, and what's the best moment to then flip the room, or the most efficient setups, or also given for the set, just looking at it, what's the most attractive way of shooting the set, if that's the goal, or the most powerful way to shoot a location. Definitely understanding what's involved in terms logistically, in terms of equipment, what the crew has to do, because one of my things that I never want to do, I never want the crew to work and then having to redo something because I made a mistake here. Let me take this back. The tracks need to go over there. Just being quicker in my decision making and always knowing what it entails. Also knowing when something is really a challenge, so I can praise my crew when that challenge is being met, be it like a very difficult focus pull or a very difficult crane or dolly move, so I can celebrate my crew when, we achieve, what we set out to do. And just having an understanding. So I think it also puts you closer to your DP because you are mind, you're of the same mind in terms of thinking things through, how it needs to be done and what it all entails. Yeah.
But do you put the DOP hat on while you're shooting, or do you let your DOP do what he or she wants to?
It's interesting because early on when I started, of course, people think you're not real, you are a DP who's directing now.
Yeah.
So, and they think that that's the main thing you bring to the table, that you can break down a scene or you're quick in shooting it. But for me, my attention always was on the actors. This was also one of the reasons why I always loved to operate everything I ever shot as a DP, because I wanted to have a very precise and intimate, close look at the actors and their performance, because that inspired my work as a cinematographer and how I would light it and how I would move the cameras, given what energy I was getting from the actor and the performance at that moment. And I think, early on, cinematographers thought and I know I was even told if I get a former DP or if I get a DP who's directing now, will that person be micromanaging me? It's so to the contrary, because I'm just glad that I can let go of the technical world around me. As a DP, I was always aware of every light and every gel I had on the lights and where everything was. And as a director, I can let go of all of that. I can blend all of that out and just fully focus on my actors in front of me and the performance that I want to get. So I actually felt very relieved being able to shed that technical weight that you carry with you as a cinematographer. And I also have way too much respect for my colleagues. I think not once did I go up to a colleague of mine and said can we make that a little bit brighter? Can we cut that one down a little bit or whatever? Because I knew right away I cannot touch that, because I would send them off like a champagne cork if I would do that. So it might even be a little bit unfair, because I felt because of my background, I definitely had to dial back on comments on set. And of course you discuss style or looks, up front, but then I completely give over those artistic choices to my cinematographer.
Coming back to the show, how did you make decisions regarding violence? There's some pretty, brutal things that we see, including a woman being burnt alive. How did you sort of make those decisions? What considerations did you have while making those decisions?
Oh, it's very, again, you're touching on a very interesting subject here. Like I love how, attentive you are to everything that's happening in our show. Yes, the Aes Sedai that's being burned, at the beginning of episode 2. Rafe and I, we both agreed that we didn't want to show this violence against women too clearly. And so I came up with the idea to basically, when she really is about to be engulfed in flames, to play it through the reflection, in the wine glass, to at least be once removed from it and not fully just set the camera up in front of her and it's like, let's see this woman go up in glory, and screaming to the heavens, so we really wanted to be removed from it and more feature the pleasure, that is taken by, the male performer, seeing that Aes Sedai go up, or being burned to death, but just removing the audience from it a little bit.
Yeah. And what about the sex? Because Rosamund Pike said in an interview that you're going to see more naked men than women. And she said it was fab because on the shoot, the men were dieting because they had to be in shape for these naked scenes. And the women were just having these lovely meals, which I thought was fantastic. But how did you make decisions about that?
That's another one, also very much guided by Rafe, both of us, making those decisions. God knows, how many times, I shot women and they had to go back to wardrobe and put on an extra push-up bra or something like this. Or when I was framing a close-up for a woman, as a DP, I was, usually it was not here. It always had to include the chest. That was very important. And you would think like, what? It's just a woman. The close-up is not that valuable without showing the chest. And I had actresses, sometimes roll their eyes at me and I said, like, how much further can they push my breast up to my chin? I'm already wearing a very uncomfortable push-up bra. So it was ridiculous sometimes, or very often, women truly always had to bare skin. And if there was a chance to show a woman naked, she would have to be the one, showing her behind or whatever it was. So it was interesting to reverse that stereotypical approach as well and have one of our male leads, Daniel Henney, descend into that beautiful bathtub and seeing Rosamund Pike completely covered, enjoying that moment. Yes.
Uta, among other shows, you've directed episodes of Stranger Things, Westworld, Orange is the New Black. What do you find most exciting about serialized storytelling?
For me, I mean, my resume is very diverse, just like you listed, because I always like to exercise a different muscle, and I love to dive into big worlds that are already created, or, in this case, I love creating worlds. But it's just interesting, every different genre has its own challenges. It's a different dynamic, obviously Stranger Things was just a wonderful, terrific show to be working on. And so was Orange is the New Black and Westworld. It's just, the wonderful thing is you always meet a completely new creative group of people that are very, very passionate about their shows and their characters. And you get to be a part of that creative family for a certain amount of time, for a couple of weeks or sometimes 2 or 3 months, to completely immerse yourself into this show. But then also you can leave it behind after those several weeks or 2-3 months and move on to something else, which I also find very refreshing, because episodic television can become a grind. That's just, especially also as a cinematographer, if you're on a show for several months, no matter how much you love your work and how inspiring it is, if you do it for 6, 7, 8 months, a year, it does become a grind. And having this new palette of ideas and stories each time by, doing episodic television as a director, it's just very refreshing. I love it.
Yeah. And finally, if there was one thing you could bring from the world of the Wheel of Time into our world currently, what would it be?
I think it's the pursuit or the idea for balance. The Wheel of Time, takes so many ideas from Asian mythology and the metaphysical ideas of duality and balance. And I think the world can use some balance. And I think we achieve balance by giving women more opportunities, like, so we get a different point of view, we get a different kind of energy. We just keep things in balance, give women opportunities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It was so lovely to speak with you.
Thank you so much, Anupama. Thank you so much for having me.